Hey, History on the Rocks podcast listeners. This episode is sponsored by the Art of Manliness podcast. If you're sick of having to wade through 2 hours of fluff in order to get a few good takeaways, tune into the Art of Manliness podcast. They glean and distill the very best insights from the world's experts in self-improvement, philosophy, practical skills, history, and more, and do so in under an hour without all that eye-roll-inducing filler. You'll walk away from every episode of the Art of Manliness podcast with actionable insights you can start implementing today to improve your life. You can listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or other podcast players. There is no God, but one God, and Muhammad is his messenger. Little Bird recited, laying back flat on the bed, wearing jeans and a blue polo. Jetliners roared outside the Comfort Inn motel next to the busy airport, which was sending off its first flights in the early morning. It was a clear, crisp fall day in South Portland, Maine, and today, Little Bird knew he was going to heaven. 2 weeks ago in Las Vegas, Little Bird had purchased his plane ticket from South Portland to Boston's Logan Airport, where he would then transfer planes for his flight to Los Angeles. In Las Vegas, Little Bird was meeting with his comrades to finish organizing the deadliest attack on American soil in history. His real name is Mohammed Atta. Mohammed Atta was given the nickname of Little Bird by his father, a gruff lawyer back in Cairo, Egypt. He believed his son was too soft and sensitive. But today, September 11th, 2001, Atta would go down in infamy. He stood in the terminal of Boston's Logan Airport at 6:50 a.m. when he received a phone call from his comrade, Marwan, who was also waiting in a nearby terminal. They spoke shortly, confirming everything was ready and in place. At 7:40 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11 pushed back from the gate as Atta and his team sat comfortably in first class. At 8:15 a.m., Marwan al-Shahi and his team pushed back on United Airlines Flight 175. At the same exact time, Mohammed Atta, airborne on American Flight 11, began his assault, taking control of the aircraft. Atta and his comrades maimed crew and passengers with mace and threatened that there was a bomb on the plane.
We have some planes, just stay quiet and you'll be okay. We're returning to the airport.
And who's trying to call me here? American 11, are you trying to call?
Nobody move. Everything will be okay. If you try to make any move, you'll injure yourself and the airplane. Just stay quiet.
Up in the first class cabin, a passenger had been slashed in the throat and 2 flight attendants stabbed with box cutters. Around 8:45 a.m., Atta pushed the controls down and flew low into the landscape of New York City. Betty Ong, a flight attendant on board, had called her colleagues on the ground.
The cockpit's not answering. Somebody's stabbed in business class. And I think there's mates that we can't breathe. I don't know. I think we're getting hijacked.
Just 1 minute later, the line dropped. American Airlines Flight 11, cruising at 500 miles per hour, slammed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center, letting off an explosion that amounted to 7 million sticks of dynamite. Just 17 minutes later, at 9:03 a.m., United Flight 175, now taken over by Marwan al-Shahi.
Hey, can you look out your window right now?
Yeah.
Can you see a guy about 4,000 feet, about 5 east of the airport right now? Looks like he's...
Yeah, I see him.
You see a guy, look, is he descending for the building also?
He's descending really quick, too, yeah.
Well, that's
2,500 feet now. He just dropped 800 feet in like one sweep.
That's another situation. What kind of airplane is that? Can you guys tell?
I don't know. I'll read it out in a minute.
United Flight 175 slammed into the South Tower.
Another one just hit the building.
Wow. Wow, another one hit it hard. Another one just hit the worst side.
The whole building just came apart.
Holy smokes.
There's another one. Another plane just hit. Right. Oh, my God. Another plane has just hit. It hit another building. Flew right into the middle of it. Explosion. My God, it's right in the middle of the building.
Around 9:37 a.m., American Airlines Flight 77 hit the Pentagon, and just a half hour after that, United Flight 93 went down in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. September 11, 2001 would become the deadliest terrorist attack in world history, causing mass chaos and killing roughly 3,000 American citizens within 1 hour of a clear East Coast morning. We will never forget. This episode is dedicated to those who lost their lives on 9/11 and to the brave men and women of the United States military who fought and continue to fight to rid of this evil from the world. That's good. All right, and welcome back to the History on the Rocks podcast. This is your host, Cody, along with me, my lovely wife, Audrey.
Hello, everybody.
And I know that's a heavy opening, but it's where our story starts today. But let's start on a more fun, positive note before we dive into the aftermath of 9/11. What are we drinking for this episode?
We are drinking Horse Soldier.
We are drinking Horse Soldier. Yes, we are. And I said on Facebook and Instagram that this is a special episode. This is going to be a few parts. I think it's going to be 3 parts in total. I'm still writing some of it as we record this first episode, but I think it's going to end up being 3 parts. And yes, we are drinking Horse Soldier, which is the whiskey that is actually created for the men in their legacy in our story. If you head over to their website, horsesoldierbourbon.com, I found my bottle at Hy-Vee after looking in a local liquor store that I thought would have a lot of different whiskeys, and they didn't have it. I went to Hy-Vee, and they had it. They also sell it at Jewel.
Oh.
Because that came up as well. But there's 3 bottles. The straight bourbon whiskey, it's about $50. We're drinking the small batch straight bourbon whiskey, which is on their website it says $74.99, but I got it for $59.99.
Well, then you got a deal.
I think I got a deal.
I don't know. Hy-Vee was having a lot of sales.
Yeah.
Maybe it was on sale.
Maybe it was. But we are drinking the small batch straight bourbon whiskey. And then they have their barrel strength straight bourbon whiskey, which is a $90 bottle. So there are 3 different bottles that they have, cheaper to that mid-range to that top shelf type. And we found this, again, in Galena.
Galena, yeah.
Galena keeps popping up on our podcast a lot.
At Champaign on Main.
Yeah, Champaign on Main. Pretty cool place.
My cousin gave us a gift card to go there Christmas of 2022. But little did I know, on Christmas Day, I was pregnant. 2 days later, found out I was pregnant. So we could not use our gift card.
We literally used it on the last week before it expired.
Yeah, because it only was for a year. It said on the gift card. I'm sure they might have understood if I, said, he gave this to us and then 2 days later found out I was pregnant.
Well, that's all. It was awesome. But we finally did get to Galena to Champaign on Main, and this was one of the tasting bourbons.
Yeah.
And it's really good. I really liked it.
Yeah, this was like your favorite out of the 4.
Oh, yeah, easily.
You had 4 or 3?
I think there was 4.
Yeah, because I did the champagne tasting.
Right. I think there was 4 of them, but this was definitely the best one. And then I looked at, they told us, I think the waitress told us, the history behind it, right? It's made after, they said something, I thought she said something about,
I don't remember.
It's made in Kentucky, but it's really cool. If you go to their website, and you go to the menu and you click on Our Legacy, it tells you all about the distillery and how they got started and their story and the origins of the Horse Soldier. They have a little excerpt on here. Horse Soldier Bourbon's story is woven into the fabric of one of America's most historic moments. Just days after 9/11, elite teams of Green Berets were inserted into Afghanistan, some on horseback. Dubbed the Horse Soldiers, their exploits were retold in the Hollywood blockbuster 12 Strong, which I have not seen.
Which is shocking because we watch like all those war
Types of movies. And I think I've seen 12 Strong, and I kind of just went past it without even giving it a second thought.
Well,
and
that's
then
next on our movie list.
Yep. And then the CNN documentary, Legion of Brothers, memorialized it as well. And there's a giant horse statue at Ground Zero that I can put on our website here. You can go see it on their website. But it's the America's Response Monument located at Ground Zero in New York City, and it's one of the soldiers with his M4 strapped on him riding a horse.
I don't remember seeing that.
I don't remember seeing that either, so I wonder if that's newer but we haven't been to New York City, and that was that pre-COVID?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That was...
I don't remember what year it was. When
that was only a couple years into
Tower 1 or...
dating or something like that. One World Trade.
One World Trade, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, like I said on our Facebook, Instagram, this is an exciting episode because we have a bourbon that goes straight along with our story. And I've been so pumped to do this one.
Yeah, I'm excited about this one because you haven't, obviously told me anything about it. So it'll be all new information.
Now, the really cool thing about this is I went even a step further and I put together a Google Earth presentation together for everyone listening. Now, if you pull up your phones and you download the Google Earth app, okay, you can pause right now, go to our website. If you go to the Horse Soldiers page under full episodes, there is a little pin icon that you would see on a map. If you click on that, it should take you to the App Store to download Google Earth. But if you already have Google Earth downloaded, it'll take you right to our interactive map for this episode. And you can follow along on the map from start to finish of all these places we're going to be talking about, from Fort Campbell at the Tennessee-Kentucky border all the way into Mazar al-Sharif, the final city of their mission. Again, go ahead. You can take a pause right now and go download that because it's going to be really easy for you to follow along with us as we kind of fly over Google Earth during this story. This is part 1, going to war. After 9/11, George W. Bush needed to quickly figure out who was responsible for the 9/11 attacks, so he wanted to react immediately by declaring war on those responsible. At this time, we all know the name Osama bin Laden. His group Al-Qaeda, consisting of about 3,000 trained soldiers, had merged with the Taliban, which was made up of 15,000 men who were mostly farmers, butchers, teachers, and lawyers, right? Your everyday person. Mm-hmm. The main goal of these two groups was to bring the Middle East back to its golden age when Islamic law ruled the land just like it did in its prime of the 14th century. However, in Afghanistan, there was no major resistance against the Taliban by Afghanis, and this effort was led by Ahmed Shah Massoud, who absolutely hated the Taliban and their extremist version of oppressive Islamic laws. The first step for Al-Qaeda and the Taliban was to assassinate Massoud and have the Taliban take full control of Afghanistan. Massoud was the commander of the Northern Alliance. Okay, so that's a very important group. The Northern Alliance is our ally in this story.
Okay, I was going to ask that. They're on our side.
Correct. The Northern Alliance is a coalition force made up of anti-Taliban fighters. The coalition was an alliance of 3 rival generals and their tribes: Abdul Rashid Dostum, Atta Muhammad Noor, who is not the same terrorist responsible for 9/11. Obviously,
is the same name?
So the terrorist from 9/11 is Muhammad Atta, and this is Atta Muhammad Noor. Okay, but I want to clarify that this is not the terrorist. Obviously, he's dead, but don't get that confused as we tell the story, because Atta Muhammad Noor is a general of a tribe, and the last general is Naji Mohammed Mohakek. Now, these 3 generals were after their own control of Afghanistan, but they all knew that if they were too busy fighting each other, that the Taliban would easily take over. So they put their rivalries aside and formed this Northern Alliance.
Okay.
Just going forward in these episodes, I might say Northern Alliance. I might just say NA. Okay. So for listeners and you, obviously, just shorthanding NA is the Northern Alliance. That's our allied fighting force that are working with the Americans.
Yes. So in the same area, though, how are those three rivals? I know like the Taliban and Al Qaeda, they're going against them, but why were those three all against each other?
Because they all have different political beliefs, but they all don't believe in the Sharia law being the law of the people. They don't believe in Islamic law being the center like the Taliban and Al Qaeda do, because it's oppressive.
Okay.
These men are partiers. They like drinking. They like smoking. They like music. Like, they like stuff that the Taliban won't let you do.
Okay.
These three generals are the head of different tribes who are rival tribes in these regions.
Okay.
And they're fighting for control. They were once fighting for control over Afghanistan to be the top dogs, to be the head governments.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
But now that the Taliban and Al Qaeda have taken such control, all three of them decide that their rivalry isn't worth it and that they should pull all their resources together to out the extremists and the terrorists.
Okay.
Back to Ahmed Shah Massoud. This is an important name. Massoud had been fighting the Taliban for 7 years and also fought the Soviets for 10 years during their invasion of Afghanistan. Al-Qaeda and the Taliban were destroying Massoud's resistance, and he knew it would be hard to win this war. He was assassinated on September 9th, 2001, just 2 days before the terror attacks in New York City, by bin Laden's men. Captain Dean Nosserog of the U.S. Special Forces was on his honeymoon in Tahiti when the planes hit the towers. And he also saw the news article from September 9th in the hotel lobby about Massoud being assassinated and Osama bin Laden being responsible for it. And he knew that this was not a coincidence at all. He knew that he had to get back to the States because we were going to war. Right when the Taliban killed Massoud, this guy has nothing to do with the three generals. Actually, we'll get to it, but two of these generals fought for Massoud alongside him while he was fighting the Soviets and the Taliban.
Mm-hmm.
But he's like head honcho.
Yeah.
So the Taliban knew that they had to kill him to bring down the Afghani government so they could take control.
So before he was assassinated, did we have, like the United States, Osama bin Laden already on our radar?
Yes.
Okay.
We knew that, I mean, not to get into this, but we knew that 9/11 was going to happen. Not exactly that how it was going to happen, but we knew that there was a big terror plot against the United States. It's all in the report. It's all in the report that the FBI, the CIA, they knew something was big was coming, and we failed to stop it. It's one of the biggest controversies of 9/11.
I remember that being a controversy, that there was...
Bin Laden was public enemy number one since, I think, the 70s or 80s.
Okay. Yeah, that's a long time.
Like, he was the head of Al-Qaeda and forming these terror cells, and we knew who he was and we knew what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we were naive to think that they could pull something so big off.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody would have expected what did actually happen.
No. I don't think anyone could dream of that possibility and that magnitude of a terror attack.
Not at all.
The one that just happened in Russia, unfortunately, at the concert hall, 190 people. That's a big terrorist attack.
Yeah, definitely.
And New York City's 3,000.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Well, 9/11 in general is 3,000 when you add
the people
the
in the
Pentagon,
building,
the planes, and all that stuff. This is huge. Like, terror cells don't pull off this big of an attack ever. They like to go after, hundreds of people, but thousands and infrastructure, the center of World Trade, literally, obviously that's what it's called, the World Trade Center.
Yeah.
But like, this is like unforeseeable. Like, there is some defense I'll give to the U.S. government, because like they had a lot of intel, a lot of information, but at the same time you're going, there's no way someone's hijacking planes and flying them into buildings.
Yeah.
It's easy to be like, oh, they're going to take a backpack and blow up a bomb at a concert or a sporting event or, big rally, whatever. Like, that kind of stuff is like, okay.
Flying commercial planes.
Not hijacking commercial planes and throwing them into the world's biggest economic center.
Yeah.
Like, it is unfathomable when we talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. It's like, what's that song again? When the World Stops Turning.
Yeah. Was that Alan Jackson?
Yes.
Where were you when the world stopped turning?
Yeah. 5th grade. Getting on the bus.
Yeah, I tried to start a Facebook thread on the event page for this, and I said, where were you on 9/11? And my post was, I was in 5th grade sitting in the hallway waiting for the day to start.
Yeah.
You were on the bus because our district shared buses.
Yeah, I didn't
and
start
you started
till
school
9:10.
later. Yeah. And I think we started at 8:45 or something like that. 8:30 maybe. But that would have been a half hour after the first plane hit because it was New York time is 9:01 when the first plane hits. And that would have been 8:01 Central.
8:01. Yeah. Crazy.
All right, well, we're going to head to the map.
All right.
So if you're following along with our Google Earth, okay, we're starting at Fort Campbell, which is right on the Tennessee-Kentucky border. And if you're looking at the map, you can zoom in and kind of see the layout of the base there. This is where a lot of military families live, especially the 101st Airborne and the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment. They are all stationed at Fort Campbell, located in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. That also crosses into the border of Clarksville, Tennessee. The men that are key players in this story are stationed along there with their families, as I just said. Many of them were out doing training missions on 9/11 and didn't hear of the attacks until later in the day. Many of them sped back to base in a frenzy, seeking orders and wondering when they were leaving. There's a part in the book where actually one of the wives was out and she had left the base to go do some errands or something. She came back and the line to the base was like 2 miles long of people trying to get back in, and they are checking everyone's IDs, everyone's cars, trunks underneath,
Yeah.
They are locked down.
Yep. Don't want anything else to happen anywhere else.
DEFCON 5. Like, we are locked down, so we don't want anyone coming into our military bases. So this is a very chaotic time for a lot of these guys because they know they're going to war now. Many of them do. And also, they're trying to get back to their base to go get ready.
Yeah.
President Bush took many suggestions in the following days of the 9/11 attacks in order to plan the best course of action. CIA Director George Tenet first proposed sending in CIA operatives along with Special Forces soldiers. Major Mark Mitchell, ground commander of Special Forces, and Chief Warrant Officer Cal Spencer, assistant team leader, would follow the planning process closely throughout the upcoming days. The final decision was that the United States would primarily use air power utilizing cruise missiles and laser-guided bombs, with Special Forces on the ground spotting and calling out targets. Special Forces and CIA operatives would also be responsible for building relationships among the Afghan tribes and training the Northern Alliance's forces to be the main ground support. So instead of us sending our whole military over, what we're doing is we're sending a select few of special operators, our
top dogs.
They're our ghosts. Like they're the guys you wouldn't ever see on the street and be like, "Oh, that guy's a soldier."
Yeah.
I mean, they might be built like one, but at the same time, these aren't guys in military fatigues and easy to spot. These are our ghosts of the U.S. military. They're badass as hell.
Like SEALs?
Yeah, but these are Green Berets that we're going to be talking about. So that's the Army.
Okay.
We're talking about Army Special Forces.
So that's like the comparable.
Navy SEALs
comparable.
are correct. It's comparable, and I'm sure there's going to be fighting about this. If Navy and Army are listening to this podcast, just like everything else, Green Berets are better, SEALs are better. I don't care. I think they're both badass, and
totally.
They're unbelievable. They are unbelievable. But yeah, they're gonna use the Northern Alliance's men as their ground support, as the special operators carry out bombing missions and get closer to targets, so that the Air Force can come in and lay their payload.
Yeah.
Getting into Afghanistan was going to be tough. However, General Tommy Franks, very famous general, all through the Gulf War in the 90s through 9/11 in Afghanistan, he's in charge of U.S. command in the Middle East. He had gone and convinced the president of Uzbekistan, so that just lies north of Afghanistan, the country of Uzbekistan, to allow a U.S. airbase to operate there. This would be key to the whole retaliatory plan. The mission would be classified and top secret. Now, Major Mark Mitchell, Captain Dean Nosarog, and Chief Warrant Officer Cal Spencer were now arriving at work at 4 a.m. and staying all the way until midnight preparing for this. Life as they knew it was now canceled. They were in full preparation mode for they could get called in to leave any minute, right? Like, they're on the clock.
Yeah, for sure.
Special Forces 5th Group was constantly training, taking inventory on broken equipment, and making lists of things they would need before they headed out. The 5th Group commander was Colonel John Mulholland. Colonel Mulholland was doing everything in his power to get his men what they needed. He had a connection at the Pentagon in D.C., General Lambert, who he served under as a lieutenant in the Special Forces. With this general's help, the Pentagon granted unlimited spending on whatever new gear the group needed. They call it the gold credit card.
The American Express.
Yeah, the literal American Express. They needed radios, laptops, GPSs, gloves, tents, sleeping bags, you name it. The Army is not well known for having, the best equipment for their soldiers or buying new stuff, like
Really?
on a dime. Well, they are now.
I was saying,
I think they're better now. But what I've
that.
heard from friends that have been in the military and stuff, it's like you're working with a lot of broken, gadgets and...
Yeah. And you need stuff not broken when it comes to this.
Well, exactly.
Or really any time, but especially this.
Yeah. So they needed all this stuff. And camping stores like Cabela's,
Bass Pro Shop.
Bass Pro Shop, thank you. That's the other one I was thinking of. Camping stores would be bought clean out of supplies, and FedEx was delivering to the base constantly on rush orders. Captain Mitch Nelson would not take no for an answer, and he demanded that he be back with his team for this mission after being promoted up to the 5th Group headquarters working a desk job, which he absolutely hated. So Mitch Nelson, he had gotten a promotion, but he likes to be in the field. He likes to be on the ground. He doesn't want to work a desk job, and he says, this is such a big moment right now that I need to be with my team going into this.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people that are in the military don't prefer a desk job.
No.
That's not what you go into the military for.
No, you can go get a desk job anywhere.
Yeah.
People go into the military because they want to make a difference and they want to fight.
The people that do the desk jobs are still extremely important.
Oh, hell yeah.
But
I'm not taking any credit away from them, but these kind of guys, these guys who are Green Berets, they want to go.
On the ground.
They want to go. With the help of Chief Warrant Officer Cal Spencer and Master Sergeant Pat Essex, Lieutenant Colonel Max Bowers was convinced to give Captain Nelson his old active duty job back. He then ordered them that they had 6 hours to be on an inbound aircraft on their way to K2 Air Base in Uzbekistan. So if we're looking at our map and we click on the arrow, all right, you're going to see it. It's going to fly you over.
Oh, yes.
And then if you hit the arrow again, it's going to bring you in on the K2 base, Karshi Khanabad Air Base, better known as K2. So that's what we're looking at now at a satellite image. You can see there's a couple buildings, runway, little town, little village. Khanabad is right there.
It's so crazy to look at this. It looks like something you would see in the middle of nowhere, America.
Very rural. This is the base. K2 is the base that General Tommy Franks had talking to the Uzbekistan president about for them to be able to operate into Afghanistan from.
Yes.
Now, entering Afghanistan, General Mohammed Mohakkek, one of the 3 generals heading the Northern Alliance, was relieved that Americans were finally on their way. He knew that the Americans had felt the anguish and terror that the Afghans had been feeling under the thumb of the Taliban. In the streets of Mazar al-Sharif, orphans begged for food, goats were slaughtered, carcasses laying in the streets, doors of homes were kicked in, and the innocent civilians of Mazar slaughtered. Mohakkek wanted revenge on the Taliban for these atrocities, and most importantly, he wanted to claim his city back. So if you go ahead and click the arrow again, it's going to fly you into Mazar al-Sharif. Okay, this is a pretty big city in northern Afghanistan.
It's pretty far away.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is going to be like, I think it's like a 5-hour helicopter ride into this area.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so from Uzbekistan, this flight, that green path right there goes from K2 down to where their infill point's going to be. However, Mazar al-Sharif, I wanted to show you at the beginning of this because this is their objective. This city is their objective, to take this city back from the Taliban.
Oh, okay.
And Mohakkek, he has seen what the Taliban has done to the people. Like I just said, there's kids orphaned in the street because their parents have been killed. There's goats slaughtered so that the people can't eat them. There's dead animals laying all in the streets. Houses are destroyed.
Yeah.
People are dead in the streets. So he wants revenge and he wants to claim his city back. Now, General Abdul Rashid Dostum, our other general of the Afghan tribes, he's a very dangerous man. He visits Moakek and tells him that they were going to be visited by some, quote, special friends, unquote, and inquired as to how he felt about that. Moakek replied that for the last year he had written the Americans some 300 letters begging for help, and that the Taliban would kill everyone who denied them or stood in their way. Dostum told Moakek to go home and light up 14 light bulbs. 14 light bulbs would show their, quote, special friends, unquote, that it was safe to land there. Moakek struggled to figure out where he would get the electricity in the middle of the Darya Suf River Valley. This is a very deep into the mountains part of Afghanistan, just for clarity.
Yeah.
Not a lot of electricity. The only running water is from the river, which we'll get into more. Moakek figures it out. He purchased a generator on the black market and got those light bulbs lit. Just as the light bulbs started to glow, a chopping sound from above started to approach. Jumping off this chopper were several men dressed in American-style clothing, flannels and cargo pants, carrying their computers and weapons strapped around them. These were the CIA operatives that are going to work with the special forces.
Yeah.
After an offering of food and some sleep, Moakek drove the men up to the village of Dihai.
I didn't know you could do this with these maps. It's really cool.
Yeah.
To be able to just look at it all and it's all labeled. And
Yeah, you can create this. It's really cool. Where the river bends, they stopped at a mud building with high walls held together by heavy pieces of wood. This safe house would be called the Alamo by the Americans. Staying at this camp was General Abdul Rashid Dostum, who seemed to already have a close relationship with the American CIA. The other general, Atta Mohammed Noor, was also present there. Now, the Northern Alliance, led by these three gruff and fearsome men, were helping attack from the south, as Massoud, when he was alive, was fighting fearlessly in the north. After Massoud's death, however, things started to get tougher for the anti-Taliban fighters. The Northern Alliance had a steadfast goal. They wanted to divide the Taliban front, which was stretching from the city of Kunduz all the way to Mazar al-Sharif. And if you go past Dihai, it'll take you to Kunduz, and it'll show you that is also an objective there. The main objective was to take Mazar. Mazar was the key to ruling the northern part of Afghanistan. From there, the NA could move south into Kandahar and eventually all the way to the Pakistan border. Then take Kabul, completely wipe out the Taliban, and rule Afghanistan. So all of those cities, if you click through, you can see where they are. Kabul is the capital of Afghanistan. Just so, if you don't know that, that's the capital city. That's the end goal. However, they have to start somewhere. And the city of Mazar al-Sharif is the northern part where they want to lock down first before they can move south again. Now, Mazar was not an easy city to infiltrate. At the outer limits of Mazar, the Taliban were holding on to a large fortress called Kali-e-Jangi. They've had this since 1998 when they overtook the city. Prior to that, it was General Dostum's headquarters in 1997. Mazar is so important because of the oil and gas deposits near the city. The longest paved runway in the country was at its airport, and the bridge over the Oxus River was a strategic way to move men and materials to and from Uzbekistan. Atta, Dostum, and Moakek's men had ridden horses into harsh battles against the Taliban, and now their supplies were running low. The climate of this geographic area was also important for timing. It would soon be winter, and the Hindu Kush Mountains, which towered about 25,000 feet from the desert floor, would soon turn into a freezing tundra.
This isn't like desert area?
We're in the mountains now.
Oh.
So just north of the mountains is Mazar al-Sharif, but we're starting in the mountains.
Oh, okay.
Afghanistan is not like Saudi Arabia where it's mostly desert. It's very mountainous.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just trying to...
That's fine.
Just trying to look at the map a little bit more. Because I see the map, or look, I don't know. Maybe because I can't see like the terrain. It looks like the mountains are just more west. Is that, am I looking west? Yeah. Well,
The area that we're looking at is
Yeah.
all mountains.
it's all mountains. Oh, okay.
Yeah. You're looking in the valleys here.
I was like, I think it's just hard to tell on this map. It
You
all
can
looks
hit-
flat.
You can hit 3D.
Oh, that might help.
You can hit 3D and see the ridges of the mountains. If you zoom in.
Whoa, it's like circling. Okay. Oh, this is cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you hit next and go to Kala Ijangi, it'll zoom you into the fortress that we're talking about.
Okay. Oh.
Now, in this region, the Taliban have tanks and other heavy machinery left over from the Soviet invasion. The Northern Alliance men were on horseback with very little ammunition to use against the Taliban. More supplies and ammunition were needed in order to keep pushing the Taliban back. They made some advancement by capturing a Taliban bunker and taking ammunition and grenades, but how long would this really last them? Now, back at the Alamo in Dehi, okay, it's just south of Dehi. And again, these are approximate locations I'm talking about because obviously I don't know the exact areas
Well, yeah.
and the exact pinpoint data points on a map. So I'm giving a general area as to how I read the book and looked at the map and just giving you an idea of what this area looks like and where we're talking about.
And, I mean, it was, 23 years ago.
Correct.
It's probably looking a lot different because I'm sure these satellite images are a lot different than they were in 2001.
So back at the Alamo in Dehi, the American CIA operatives Dave Olson, J.J. Sawyer, and Mike Spann were settling into their new environment. General Moakek found himself disappointed that these men were not soldiers and spent much of their time on laptops working diligently. However, what these men did bring was an abundance of cash. American cash.
The good stuff.
That is the good stuff over there. This was meant to be given to Atta Mohammed Noor's subcommander, Fahim Khan, who was based in the village of Barak. Khan was to use the money for food and ammunition for Atta's men. Fahim Khan was not fond of American soldiers. He once fought with Massoud and believed that there was nothing an American could teach him about Afghans fighting against enemies in Afghanistan. His attitude would change, however, after getting the wad of cash from the Americans. Atta was pleased to get American supplies, but what he wanted most was the respect of the United States military. So he wanted to be taken seriously.
Yeah. Which anybody would.
The problem Atta had was that in October, the United States was dropping bombs that were missing Taliban targets, and he believed the Taliban were gaining morale while they made fun of the American bombings over radio. Now, the Northern Alliance and the Taliban, now this is important to the story, they can hear each other and they communicate with each other over these handheld, like Motorola radios.
But they're against each other.
Correct, and that's like the funniest part here, is that they literally like talk shit to each other through these handheld radios. And trust me, in this story, we're going to see it multiple times. But like that's what they use to communicate with each other. But because they're using handhelds, they can pick up each other's frequencies. Mm-hmm. So they literally like talk shit to each other. It's like, I don't want to say it's funny, but it is funny.
Yeah, I think it is funny.
And we'll get to a story about that in part 2.
I feel like your plans and what you're going to do, they'd be able to hear that.
That's the best part is you're going to find out they don't care. Like they're going to tell them basically like, we're going to bomb the shit out of you right now. Like
this is what's happening.
It's coming. And then they're like making fun of them. Ha ha ha. And then boom, American bomb is dropped. And then they see the Taliban scurrying back into these caves and shit. It's just like I'm reading the book is just so funny in my head it's like watching one of those old cartoons with the Keystone Cops. Like just running around all like goofy and stuff because they're like literally just talking shit to each other, telling each other what's about to happen, and then like it happens, and then they're like surprised it happened. Like it's funny.
But what's in my head is now that I know it's more of a mountainous area, and I am now blanking on the movie, but it's one that we watch.
Lone Survivor.
Yes, is that this situation? But
Lone Survivor is not part of this situation. It's a different story.
But it's after 9/11?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's. I mean,
but like same areas.
Yes. Yeah.
Like location wise.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
The Americans would not trust an Afghan with spotting targets for them, and really needed American personnel on the ground to guide the bombers. Atta would not be getting any American assistance at the beginning, which infuriated him. Instead, the Americans would be working with General Dostum and his camp instead. Now remember, Atta and Dostum are bitter rivals.
Mm-hmm.
However, Dostum assures Atta that their cause was greater than their rivalry and assured him Atta would receive 50% of what the Americans supplied him. Atta came around when CIA operative J.J. Sawyer handed him a package with $250,000 in it. Again, money talks.
For sure.
He's like, oh, no, we're good.
Yep, it's all good.
No, I'll take $250,000. At this point, Atta agreed that he and Dostum would work together as allies in the fight against the Taliban. Now, 250 miles north of Dihai, back at K2 Air Base in Uzbekistan, the team was going through their pre-flight briefing. Colonel John Mulholland was direct and brief. The mission was to get into Afghanistan and link up with General Dostum in Dihai. The team was to work with the CIA team who had been up there, preparing and getting familiar with Dostum's capabilities and intelligence networks. If they could survive the first part of this mission, the next part was to capture the city of Mazar al-Sharif. Mitch Nelson's Special Forces team were loading into a Chinook helicopter headed to Afghanistan. The men knew that this could be a suicide mission, but they all knew that this mission was bigger than themselves. The flight into Afghanistan was deadly enough. The gunners on each side knew to look for flashes of anti-aircraft missiles from the ground, same with RPGs, or rocket-propelled grenades, headed to destroy the aircraft. The 160th Night Stalker pilots were the men hired to get this team as safely as possible into Afghanistan using the cover of night. These are some of the best pilots we have in the world. Now, the Special Forces unit, they were hauling feed for horses and other supplies because they knew that this is stuff that the Afghans needed.
Mm-hmm.
And most importantly, they had Russian vodka as a gift for General Dostum, his favorite, their new ally. Master Sergeant Pat Essex fully expected to be met with an ambush or a mortar attack once they landed in Afghanistan. He had been part of many different infills over his career in the military, but this was the most dangerous one yet. Essex was a simple man who actually was pissed off at the thought of getting shot at when they landed because he wanted to be a National Park ranger when his military career was over. He looked at war as a business, in that he was putting food on the table and clothes on his kids, nothing more, nothing less. Master Sergeant Essex would let history tell of his career in the military and wouldn't want his children to follow in his footsteps.
That's interesting.
Now, Essex had a photogenic memory and a can-do attitude without being a know-it-all. He never had to look at a map twice, and playing many different roles, he was a leader men looked to for guidance. As the choppers rumbled toward Afghanistan, a strange weather anomaly occurred at the border of Uzbekistan and Afghanistan. This anomaly is called the Black Stratus and is not detectable by weather radar. So when pilots first started flying this route, they were pissed at the meteorologists, the weathermen, because they obviously didn't know about this. You can't track it on a radar.
I'm curious to know what it is.
However, pilots now knew that they were going to fly blind through this black stratus and had to rely on their equipment to make it through the whiteout. They call it the black stratus, but it's actually because they're flying at night.
So it would look black at night.
Exactly, but if you were to fly through it during the day, it would look like a whiteout.
Okay.
It's a mixture of sand, snow, and other debris that fills the air in this region from getting kicked up from the desert floor and the mountains.
It's like the dust bowl.
It's like a giant dust storm. Exactly, yeah. Now packed into the back of a Chinook, which is the banana helicopter with the two rotors on top, for those of you who don't know what the Chinook is. Each operator carried as little as they possibly could. Each had a rucksack filled with extra magazines and ammunition. Magazines that you put in a rifle, not the magazines you read. For those of you who might be confused there, they're not just reading on the chopper. They had enough food for 5 days, drinking water, a compass, batteries, and a radio.
I mean, like maybe a magazine would be kind of nice.
It would be nice.
Some reading material, but...
Yeah, I think you're supposed to be paying attention, though.
Yeah, that's true.
To what's happening around you. Each man is strapped with an M4 carbine rifle, badass power load, and on their load-bearing vests, ammunition for a 9mm pistol, which was strapped to their legs, and grenades. They were ready for a gunfight right when they landed near the safe house, which is the Alamo. Now, usually, each team of 6 men would fly on separate choppers. But on this night, both teams, all 12 men, were going in on one bird. Each team has a team leader, medic, engineers, intel sergeant, comm sergeant, and weapons specialist. Nelson reminded the men that they would be operating just as the terrorists do. Attack, bomb, and report everything. With this squad of 12, Nelson knew that he could split them up into 4 teams of 3 if need be. That's how they trained minimally.
Okay.
So in their training, they can operate in teams of 3. It's better to be a team of 6, obviously. But if they had to split up, they could operate in teams of 3, and he can make up those 4 teams of 3 men if they have to go separate ways.
Yeah.
Now, the Chinook helicopter shook, rose, and dropped in the dark, thin air of night. All 12 men going in on one ship was a high risk, but Colonel Mulholland made the decision to get boots on the ground in Afghanistan after getting chewed out by Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld on the phone all day. The heaters of the aircraft were turned off to keep any heat signatures from being detected by the enemy on the ground, because they have SAM missiles, and those missiles, when they're fighting in the air, they're anti-aircraft missiles. They pick up on the heat detection, the heat source, and they follow the heat source and then hit it.
Oh, interesting.
So turning off the heaters is a big deal here.
Mm-hmm.
Mountains passing rapidly just below the belly of the chopper kept nerves on edge. The men in the chopper were freezing at high altitude, but somehow many fell asleep during the ride in. All doors, hatches, and the rear ramp were open in case they needed to make a quick emergency exit. Any airspace above 9,000 feet is what's known as the hypoxic zone. This is the altitude in which your brain literally begs for oxygen, and it makes soldiers flying at this altitude with no breathing apparatuses get goofy and eventually pass out.
Because they're in a helicopter, they're not in a plane.
Correct, and
So
the air,
it's
it's open
open.
air.
Yeah,
It's
okay,
not a
okay.
compressed cabin
Yeah.
like you would fly commercial, right?
Yeah.
They're in open air, and when you get up to that height, if you don't have an oxygen mask,
You're losing oxygen.
you're losing oxygen, right? It's better for the men to be passed out in the back while they get through this, because it can make you act like you're on drugs.
Oh. But like, is that safe to just lose oxygen and pass out?
These guys got to do what they got to do.
Like, for what would you say, or what would you think, like, is the time frame of, like, we're up here, we're going to get through it?
It has to be quick.
Like minutes?
I would say minutes. Yeah, before you like started to go brain dead from lack of oxygen.
Yeah. Okay.
I'd have to go back into the book to actually get to, but there's a story about this, of how like a co-pilot that's flying with our pilot we're going to talk about here in a second, they literally had to give him like a fidget spinner to play with because he was acting like a child.
Oh, wow.
Because that's what this hypoxic zone does to your brain.
Huh.
With that lack of oxygen.
Well, and I feel like that's so crazy because, I mean, before this, were they training for doing that? I mean, I guess you have to, that's what you are in the military for. You do trainings and stuff, but this is all new to a lot of these people, right? Or a lot of these soldiers?
This is probably new to these guys because they used, I mean, they were combat veterans of the Gulf War in the 90s. Many of these guys, which was only 10 years prior
I guess.
to 2001 when they went into Afghanistan right after 9/11. So these guys have military experience, but I'm not sure how many of them actually entered the hypoxic zone before, like on a helicopter. Probably none.
And like you don't.
It's not something
you don't
that
train
you normally. It's not. No. Well, in the special forces, you might. I'd have to look at the train, like in BUDS for the Navy SEALs, they literally drown them to make sure that they can.
Yeah, I mean, that's like intense training.
There's not many situations where you're going to be flying above 9,000 feet with open doors.
Going into maybe getting just totally shut up as soon as you land. Yeah.
Exactly. Pilot Alex McGee was at the controls flying at 12,000 feet. Each man in the back passed out, suffering from this hypoxic zone. McGee had to use his instruments on board to navigate the mountains and make sure the chopper didn't crash into a surprise peak.
Yeah.
So he's literally flying blind here. After 2 hours of flight, the chopper refueled in the air. It was now time to enter that daunting whiteout of the black stratus. So it took 2 hours from them to get to K2 Air Base, just to that border of Uzbekistan and Afghanistan.
So, again, I feel like I sound so ignorant, but the pilot has a breathing apparatus.
Correct.
To not pass out.
Correct.
Okay.
He's wearing like his oxygen mask, but no one else is because they don't.
Why doesn't anybody else get that?
Because they would waste the oxygen, and the pilot needs it to get there and back.
Oh, okay.
There's only so much oxygen in the tanks on board, so all of them breathing oxygen is going to run out for the pilot who has to go all the way back
Yeah.
with his co-pilot, I guess, but they're both going to need it.
Yeah, they need the oxygen more than the passengers. I get
Right.
it. Okay.
The Black Hawk helicopters that were flying alongside of the Chinook now turned back to base. So these Black Hawks were flying with as like security detail just in case something happened, like missiles or something like that. They were there to help protect them.
Mm-hmm.
But these Black Hawk helicopters, they don't have the equipment to fly blind through the storm anomaly. The Chinook was now all on its own until its final destination. When the Chinook finally broke out of the particle storm, the chopper was flying just 100 feet from the ground. Rocks and pillars zipping past the Chinook as it raced for the landing zone. CIA officer Mike Spann had thrown an infrared strobe beacon on the landing zone so McGee could pick it up in his night vision goggles. Now, the strobe cannot be seen with the naked eye, right? When you have like the infrared laser on a weapon.
Mm-hmm.
You remember at the end of 13 Hours when he's doing the lasso in the air?
Yeah.
Like you can only see that through the night vision goggles because of the spectrum that it's picking up, the light spectrum that it's picking up.
Okay.
So it won't attract the enemy. Like you're not seeing a flashing light, only the pilot's seeing it through his night vision goggles as he's flying.
Yeah.
McGee yells back to the operator sitting in the back that they're 60 seconds out. The landing zone is as big as a professional baseball field, and McGee aims straight for that light. 30 seconds. Each man pulled their stocking caps down and prepared to hit the ground with their 100-pound rucksacks and supplies. Remember when I said they were traveling light as possible?
Yeah, that's not light.
One of them even shaved their pencils down to 3 inches
To cut weight.
to cut ounces of weight off their backpack.
I was going to say, like, that's
Ounces.
not going to make that much of a difference.
But how much weight they're carrying, like, it does. It's still a 100-pound, like, backpack full of your shit.
Well, yeah.
Like, that's just amazing.
ammo and a 9mm is not light necessarily, so.
The landing zone sat surrounded by 3 cliffs, the perfect position for an enemy ambush. McGee pushed straight for the landing zone on a single approach. The Chinook hovered for a brief second and lowered toward the ground, shooting up the dust. The gunners on board began to pivot, ready to fire at any enemy that may attack them, because this is that pivotal moment where they could get hit by mortars, they could be ambushed. This is what they're all fearing right now, is that they're not even going to get into Afghanistan safely, that they're going to get absolutely just destroyed.
Yep.
The Afghan fighters and generals watched on as the chopper disappeared into the cloud of dust, hovering over. They eagerly waited. McGee couldn't see the ground, and in fear of taking too long and hovering still, he pulled the chopper back up, flew the chopper back around for a second approach. Now, the tension is very high here, because obviously a helicopter is making a lot of noise, and you don't want to be attracting your enemy to this noise. And they're close. The Taliban is close, as we're going to see in part 2. Now, as he hovered for a second time over the landing zone, one of the door gunners helped guide him down to the ground, yelling 15 feet, 10 feet, 5 feet, ground, and then the balloon tires bounced on the ground as Chief Warrant Officer and Assistant Team Lead Cal Spencer yelled, "Go. Go, go, go. Get out."
Run for your life, literally.
Yep. As the team ran down the ramp, they made a formation in a crescent perimeter to defend themselves if need be. McGee pulled up on the stick, shot the chopper straight up into the air, into the dark night. The humming disappeared, and for a moment on the ground, an eerie silence cast over the team as the dust cleared. And you're going to have to wait till part 2 next week to find out if they were ambushed or not.
The calm before the storm.
Cliffhanger.
Yeah. So good.
So far, so good, right? It's really a captivating story. Like, when you're reading the book, it's like you don't want to put it down because there's like the next thing and then the next thing. And then like it's just cliffhanger after cliffhanger. But like this situation is just so intense from beginning to end.
And so this crew, these people, like they're the first on the ground after 9/11.
These are the first Americans. The CIA operators were the first ones in a week before this team made its flight in.
And like CIA operators. So because I'm trying to picture things in my head and I have to have another movie reference, but like that is like
Jack Ryan.
Yeah. Not Jack Ryan, but the Benghazi movie. They're CIA operators, right?
The CIA operators. So in that movie,
The same
they're
actor, John Krasinski.
Yeah, but they're working. They are contractors for the CIA. So the people in the buildings working in those buildings that they're protecting are the CIA, but they are not CIA operatives. Like John Krasinski's character,
okay.
they're hired help.
Because they're former military.
Correct. So they're contracted. They give them a contract and say, "Hey, we need security guys." Basically,
so they're just security.
I don't want to say they're just security guys because they're more than that. Yeah. They're lifesavers, and that's what that whole movie's about. Is how badly the CIA.
13 hours.
Yeah, it's 13 hours. That movie's all about how the CIA chief's a total dick, and those guys save his ass at the end, and he's like so appreciative at the end about it, but like he treats them like dirt, and those guys, they got the biggest balls out of all of them. But the CIA operatives are there to handle the money, to collect the intel, to prepare for the special forces coming in, to build the relationships
with the Afghanis.
With the Afghanis, yes.
Or the NA.
Yes, with the NA and the Northern Alliance. They're there to mend this relationship between the American military and those tribes that they're going to be fighting with, and
because they're on the same team.
Correct, and they're there to prepare the special forces to come in and do their shit.
So, what was this movie again? 12 Strong?
12 Strong is what it's called. Yeah.
Was it just like not a big one? I mean, like, how did we miss this?
I think it's on Netflix. It's either on Netflix or Amazon. I don't know. I saw 12 Strong somewhere, and I just never really looked at it or what it was about. And I think it was because it was in the middle of all those like other hokey military movies that I'm like, I'm not watching those because I know they're like it's like D-list actors and they're not going to do a good job and they're going to piss me off watching it. Chris Hemsworth is in it, yes. I did know that.
Taylor Sheridan is in it.
So we'll have to watch it before part 2 next week.
There's a lot of people in this movie. What happened?
I don't know how
we missed it. Jeff Stoltz? What?
Audrey's very excited about the cast, so
I am.
Yeah, it's from 2018.
Like I pretty much
I have no idea.
Everybody.
I have no idea how I missed this completely. I feel like a total goober sitting here and not have watched this movie. But I'm telling you, reading the book is going to be better than
of course
watching that movie because the book is told by like the men that were there. So
yeah, for sure.
Pretty pumped.
But yeah, we're definitely going to have to watch this movie. Too bad it's 8:30 on a Monday night, or I would watch it right now.
Yeah, correct. We're recording this on Monday night because over the weekend we were pretty busy. It was Easter. Hopefully everyone had a nice Easter.
Yes, hopefully everybody did.
But we were pretty busy over the weekend and didn't get a chance to get behind the mics here, so we're going to have to check it out this weekend at some point.
For sure.
And be ready for part 2 next week.
I'm excited.
Yeah. So I hope you all enjoyed part 1 of Horse Soldiers. I'm very excited for next week because we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of our heroes on the ground there doing what they do best. And it's intense.
I bet it is.
It's intense. Currently having trouble writing it because there's stuff I have to leave out that I don't want to leave out. But I got to leave out some minute details just to get it in the podcast. And keep these episodes to an hour because this I could go on with the story for probably 5 hours straight.
But if you are that interested, make sure you read the book and then watch the movie. We can't speak on the movie yet, but and I can't speak on the book because I don't have time to read it.
I will put the link to the book, the Amazon link to the book, or maybe I'll actually find the author's page, and if he sells it on there, I'll put it on his page because then he'll make straight money on it and not have to pay Amazon. But I will put that link up there for you guys, and if you want to check it out, go for it because it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
All right.
Alrighty.
Part 2 next week. Like I said, getting into the heart of this story. Like I said, very intense. Make sure you come back because you're not going to want to miss it.
I'm excited.
I'm excited too. Y'all have a great weekend. We'll see you next week here on the History on the Rocks podcast. Get some drinks in, relax.
Go get some Horse Soldier if you want it. It's pretty good.
Go get some Horse Soldier. It is phenomenal. Anything else?
Nope.
All right.
Bye, everybody. Have a good weekend.
Cheers.